Hi, and welcome to the Debrief Show Mini. The Mini is over the summer. We're going to bring you really short debrief shows, just talking about one topic specifically that we're passionate about and we know that really impacts you and your teams too. So listen to this clip. I hope you like it, and we'll see you on the other side. Hi, welcome to another Debrief Mini dog walk. Today we're going to talk about questions during a presentation. So many people seem to be nervous of getting questions in the presentation that they can't answer. They tend to try and avoid the questions section or rush through it or super over prepare with it, when really you want to be natural and calm with the questions section. So let me tell you about that. And for those of you who are eagle-eyed and already know my SAS, Simply Amazing Structure, SAS structure, that we talked about in the Debrief Show episode 2, you may notice that I haven't yet covered the what if section at the end of the Simply Amazing Structure. We did the whole of the Simply Amazing Structure in video 2, in show 2, and then we covered why, what and how under different titles in videos 1, 3, 4 and 5, but we haven't yet covered the what if section. So this video aims to do exactly that. The what if section is all about the questions that the audience would have left. If you've already covered all of the other questions, which is why am I here, what is the information, and how do I action the information, the only question that they're going to have left is, yes, but what if I want to use it this way? What if I need it in pink? What if I have twice as many people? What if we want to do it quicker? What if we need to cut the budget? What if we need to do it later? All of that sort of thing. So they're questions that you can anticipate partially, possibly. You can anticipate, but not always. So I'm going to cover in the what if section how to prepare for the what if section before the actual presentation or talk or communication. And then I'm going to cover how to do it in the actual communication. Let's look at the preparation first then. And when you are doing preparation, you want to think about each of the audience members, either individually if you're presenting to a small number, or how you can collectively think about them. So let's say we've got a big conference presentation going on. What I would suggest you do is classify the audience into types. So it might be personality styles. You might say, well, red energy do this, or the results people do this, the sociable people would want this, the information type people will want this, and the caring type of people will want this. So based on, for example, insights discovery or DISC profiles, you might classify each of your audience into those and make sure that you've got something for everyone. Or you might decide your audience has more of a bias towards, let's say they're an audience of accountants or actuaries. They might be more interested in the data and the information. If it's a sales team, they might be more extroverted preference. So you work out the preference of the audience, make sure you cover each type, but you might play to a certain preference type. If there's a smaller number, you want to make sure that you've thought about the questions from each of those people. So the finance director is probably always going to ask about budget. The sales director might always be asking about launch date. Like most people have a key thing that they are KPI'd on, and therefore that's likely to be what their question's about. So you predict what questions they might have. Now, some of those questions, if they're what I call obvious questions, you might want to have gone back into your Simply Amazing structure and put the answers to the questions back in the why, what or how boxes. And some questions you might want to leave in the questions. You maybe don't want to bring it up, but you want to be ready if they ask you about it. And that's fine too. Make sure that you think about the questions, and then as you answer them in your preparation, you decide if you want to reverse back and put the answers in your SAS, or if you're happy to keep them as potential questions. But of course you probably want to prepare your answer, not by rote, but do you have the facts that you need in order to answer those questions? I think I said about having hidden slides before, so you know how to get hidden slide if you need that for the answer to your questions. Then when it comes to actually answering the questions, So we're actually live in situ now and the presentation or communication is happening. What you want to ask, so you've done your why, you've done your what, you've done your how. So for most people, you'd consider that you've done your presentation. This now is where you ask, does anyone have any questions or thoughts? Now it's really important to say thoughts. Anyone have any questions or thoughts? Because what happens when you just ask if anyone has any questions is that people start getting really nervous about what they might ask. They worry that the questions they might ask are stupid. They go back to school and think, no, I don't want to put my hand up. So you put them under that pressure of not wanting to look stupid in front of their colleagues. And yes, this even happens on boards. So the better thing to do is ask if anyone has any questions or thoughts. And you'd have an open body language with your hands going, anyone got any questions or thoughts? And what you'd do then is wait, give it a few moments and wait. And what someone would do is someone might just come up with a thought. Well, I really like that idea, Dee. Or I don't really like that idea, Dee. Either of those is brilliant. What you want to do is get objections out. So this is the magic of this section, is you get to see what people really think, what they're worried about, what they're thinking about for the future. It's a great opportunity to come up with new ideas, to upsell, to cross-sell, to learn about what different departments are doing. It's a really good place to do that. Now you have your upselling and your cross-selling opportunity. You have an opportunity to learn about what different departments are doing, because you're saying any questions and thoughts, and people might say, well, we're launching this other product or this other piece of software. How does this fit into the software update that you've recommended? So you get to learn about things that maybe you wouldn't know about otherwise, because if you're presenting, especially to the board, they've got a broader vision of what's going on and they want to connect it to their other KPIs or project. So it's really good to understand what they're doing. And I always say it's better to have an objection in the room than let them leave the room and then they talk about you in the lift and you don't, or elevator, and you don't get to hear that objection. It's much easier to handle it when it's in the room. So you do want objections. I know most people with monkeys, if you're already worried that you're not good enough or that you're stupid, you worry about the questions part because you don't want people to ask you questions because there's a chance you're going to look more stupid. So you really need to tame your monkey so that you can handle these questions and thoughts really well. Now, maybe I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, when I ask, is there any questions, I'm faced with a blank looks. Well, that's because you've asked, is there any questions? So they're all going, don't want to say that. They're all looking really nervous. The other thing is that you haven't asked, is there any questions or thoughts? When you have questions and thoughts, some people say that it's very silent when they ask questions or thoughts. Well, largely the first thing is they're probably not asking, have you got any questions or thoughts? They're probably asking, do you have any questions? And then people feel really nervous about that, so they don't answer. But when you ask if you've got any questions and thoughts, more people will speak up because you go, what are your thoughts? Now, even if nobody then speaks up, you choose somebody who's been really positive throughout your presentation, or at least nodded at one bit, and you go, Will, I noticed that you agreed that the turnover was going up. How do you feel about that? And then Will will say something, and then you might go, Carol, I think in your region this happened, is that right? And you let people talk, and then eventually after about 3 or 4 of those thoughts or comments come out, somebody will ask a real question that they wanted to ask but didn't feel safe doing. So what we're doing by bringing out the questions and thoughts is we're able to get the real objections out of the way. There's one last bit to the what if section, which is about wrapping up with a negative statement and a positive statement. I'm going to go into that in a different video at another time, and for now just know that there's a tiny little extra piece at the end of the questions and thoughts, which is about making sure you wrap up and motivate people into action. So now you know how to manage the questions and thoughts section brilliantly. Just try out that little piece. You don't have to change everything in the SAS all at once. Why don't you try out in your next communication presentation or even email asking, do you have any questions or thoughts about that, and see how that goes. good luck, and thank you for tuning in to the Debrief Show Mini. Thank you for listening to this mini debrief show just over the summer, and we'll be back soon with some fascinating guests, and they will be available on podcast too when they're done in series 2. For now, series 1 guests are dropping across the summer every 2 weeks or so as a podcast. So if you didn't get a chance to catch them on lives or on YouTube, then it's going to be available on your favourite podcast, Apple, Spotify, or search anywhere you listen to a podcast for The Debrief Show with Dee Clayton, and follow, and then you will know when new episodes are dropped. So we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for joining us for this Debrief Mini over the summer. Enjoy the summer, won't you?